3.3. Writing Original Dialogue. I first heard about clams on episode 52 of the Script Notes podcast. A clam is a line of dialogue that's extremely cliched, a turn of phrase that is tired, old and beginning to stink. The podcast's hosts, John August and Craig Mason, read out a huge long list, many of which mainly apply to action movies, but quite a few apply to sitcoms, which are worth thinking about. One comment first, there is a problem here. Your sitcom dialogue needs to be real and believable. People should say lines that have a ring of truth, the kinds of things that people actually say. But we live in a society that is heavily influenced by television and movies. Now, people often say lines that are very common in movies. One of the most tiresome of this must surely be, "I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you." I'm sure it was an original line once, but it's been duplicated and rehashed so many times that now it's only ever meant as a lame joke. Your job as a sitcom writer is to write dialogue that has a ring of truth and authenticity, but is also funny, relevant, in character, and original. That means that even though people say clams in everyday life, we have to avoid them in our dialogue, even if some of the characters are the kind of people who say these hack lines. In researching Bluestone 4.2, Richard and I talked to soldiers not just for stories and accuracy, but to hear how they talked. We found that soldiers had picked up a lot of catchphrases from TV comedy. For example, they would talk about cunning plans, obviously quoting Baldrick from Blackadder. We couldn't have our catchphrases use phrases like that, even if they were realistic. We had to come up with our own way of talking, which felt real and truthful, but also original. Hopefully we succeeded in that. Soldiers tell us we did, which is nice. So let's make a start on that list. The legacy of Chandler Bing. Did I just say that out loud? Yes, Chandler Bing, you did. And that line felt fresh and funny at the time. Now everyone says it, it feels old and stale. The line is from the very first episode of Friends. But even if it weren't from a superb first episode of one of the greatest sitcoms of all time, it sounds second-hand now. The same goes for Don't Even Go There and Too Much Information, or variants like That Was More Than I Needed to Know, or I'll Never Get That Image Out of My Head. We know in our hearts these are hack second-hand lines. They should never appear in our scripts, even though people still use those phrases in everyday life. You make that sound like it's a bad thing is a little more recent, but we're done with that too now, aren't we? I know it was funny when Gene Hunt said it in Life on Mars, but let's retire it now. Along with, I just threw up a bit in my mouth, or the more British, I just did a bit of sick in my mouth. It's no longer original. And there's the variant of this line at times of happiness or laughter, I did a bit of wee just then. Again, we're done with this. Stuff your dad would say. Then there are weak conversational lines like, we have to stop meeting like this. It's the kind of thing your parents would say passing someone on the stairs. See also, don't call us, we'll call you. And abstract noun is my middle name, unless you're Austin Powers. Argument hack lines. Arguments throw out plenty of well-worn cliches like, you give the thing a bad name, and calling you a thing is an insult to slightly larger category of thing. Then the line of incredulity, what part of thing don't you understand? Undermining your reality. There are lines that acknowledge that we're in a sitcom. It's early in the episode and nothing big has gone wrong yet, like, what could possibly go wrong, or how hard can this be? And the classic, no, I'm not going to do the thing, and then we cut to them doing the thing. Sometimes that's called the bicycle cut. You're never going to get me on a bicycle, cut to them on a bicycle. And then after the calamity, explosion or catastrophe, our hero says, that went well. Although the audience know it's a sitcom and know it's not real, they are happy to suspend their disbelief while you tell a story. Clanging bells with lines that undermine the realism of the genre don't help. Your writer friends might think it's clever or ironic, but the vast majority of the audience really don't care and don't appreciate having the show they're watching undermined. It's almost as if you are telling the audience they're stupid for suspending disbelief, which is pretty rich coming from a writer. There are other ways of undermining the realism by having your characters quote cliches from movies. In some circumstances, it might be okay to have one character's quest, see Clear Toss, chapter 2.6, to be able to say a movie line to a certain person in a certain way. But I think we're done with references to Taxi Driver, Goodfellas and The Godfather, aren't we? And while we're about it, can we lose the first rule of Fight Club jokes too now, please? Please stop now. There are jokes like, he's behind me, isn't he? Unless you have a really good twist on this, we did one of those in 12 minutes into episode 8 of series 1 of Bluestone 4.2, or any of the above. Avoid them. Give it a few more minutes, delete it and force yourself to come up with something better. And if your characters seem to keep spouting cliches rather than have a voice of their own, you might want to go back and redefine your characters. One last one. My esteemed co-writer Richard Hurst pointed out the gag when people are looking at porn and then they turn the picture or their head sideways, at which point it makes sense. Agreed, hacky, stop it. If you're writing draft zeros super fast, it may be okay to reach for a stinking clam as long as you find something more original at a later date. Best avoid them altogether, not least because avoiding hack ways of talking will make your script stand out, even if the premise isn't all that brilliant and the jokes aren't all that funny. If you have an ear for interesting and realistic dialogue, your script may well get you meetings or other work. The two terrors. Maybe you're using hack lines because you can't think of a decent joke, or you're trying to get around characters saying stuff that's useful and plotty. There's a sense in which every script is trying to navigate between the Scylla of hack lines and the Charybdis of boring exposition. So let's try and find a path between those two classical terrors which demonstrate I'm an overeducated writer desperate to show off his knowledge of Greek mythology. We've had a swipe at hack lines, let's have a swing at boring exposition.